Good morning, and I hope that you're enjoying the event. I am Jerome, and today I get to talk about a topic that really is close to my heart, which is how to leverage collaboration and modern practices to improve the security of our organizations. I am Jerome. I work for VMware, where I help organizations modernize their security, specifically through the use of cloud-native architecture and agile methodologies. Throughout my career, I've been fortunate to have different roles, from development to system engineering to security, and today to be customer-facing, helping organizations through their transformation journey and modernization. But one thing that has been striking me, both when I was doing security and today when I help organizations, is a striking difference that you have in terms of organization between security and control function on one hand and the rest of the business. On one hand, the business and the IT is looking for innovation, is striving for this customer centricity, capturing better the needs of customers to respond to it faster. While security and control functions are really concerned on what can go wrong, on controlling, making sure nothing is broken. Business sees a competition as a threat and really needs to be able to be always fast and always striving towards these new players of digital transformation. Whereas security tends to look at the news and be worried about attack and malicious insiders. As a result, the pace that is demanded is very different. Developers want to go fast. Security wants to have more of a measured pace to make sure that things are done in quality and in a good way. In fact, when we look at a study, we see that 83% of IT executive and professional in security as well consider that the relationship between security and IT is negative, while the majority of them actually consider that fostering this collaboration is primordial and is a priority for them. In the past, wherever we had a new technology, the security industry ended up with new security solutions. For one new complex systems, you need a new security solution. But when you scratch the surface and you ask these different organizations, you realize that organizations already have between 60 to 100 different security systems. They don't need more. They all are complaining of the challenge of the integration of the systems and are all striving for more resources. More security solutions might actually be counterproductive in this aspect. These challenges are not new. Different organizations have different objectives. The organizational structure do not follow the value chain, and as a result, each organization and each department tend to introduce their own tool sets for their own rules and own goals. But when you look at the security activities, you realize that most of them are multidisciplinary and that actually very few of them can be done by security alone. Security is an organizational goal, and it is the ability of an organization to recover, not of a security department to deploy a new security solution. So how do we get this? How do we improve security and foster this collaboration to get those goals? Whether you've studied business or been rowing or paddling on a dragon boat, you would know that one of the most important aspects of fostering collaboration and performance is making sure that everyone paddles in the same direction. Everyone shares a goal that is beneficial for everyone. And synchronicity is key to making sure that resources are not wasted. So when we look back into those challenges on both sides, we can look at it from two sides of the same coin. Actually, what kind of activity can be done to leverage and to motivate better outcome for everyone? We're at Stack 2020, which means that everyone here must be familiar with the 4 metrics of DevOps. And how do we measure the performance of organization to deliver better IT? When we look at those metrics, it is often a benchmark of IT performance. But if we look in underlying, we can see that they are actually can be used for better security as well, creating one first component of alignment between security and the developers. When we look at the lead time to improve the ability to deliver new ideas to production, cleaning up those processes frees the time for developers and operators to work with security on matters that are usually left aside because of short time. The deployment frequency is a goal for most of the developers to make sure that they can deploy new features fast. And is sometimes perceived as a threat by security. But an organization that is able to deploy fast the new features is also able to deploy fast new patches, as we can see constantly across organizations who've done the transformation. On the next step, when we improve the mean time to restore, it's an obvious win for security. Anyone who can restore a system to their known state can handle incident better and can proactively use this capability to restore clean state and trusted state without, even when no incident happens, without waiting for problems to happen, to make sure that the system always runs as it should be. When we look at the change failure rate, and if you think about the ability of developers to push new changes without breaking anything as a common goal, what we see is organizations using this capability to deploy and to automate the patching, to deploy and automate the ability for security and operators to introduce change without breaking anything on the application. This creating the trust in the organization that they can apply change without issues. But what I love about these metrics is that none of them can be achieved by a team by themselves. They are the result of collaboration and working out the processes instead of tools. Lead time requires a better backlog management and to create lean processes. Increasing your deployment frequency requires automation of the CI/CD process, which means that security tests, which used to be manual, can be automated. Improving the mean time to restore requires proactive testing, proactive cloud-native and loosely coupled architecture, as we know, but leading organization practice such as chaos engineering to really improve the ability to measure how good they are at restoring and improving it continuously rather than doing it on an annual basis. And change failure rate is a direct result of good IT practices and development practices. Test-driven development, deployment strategies that allow us to do change without outage. So when we look at this goal and we create this bond between security and developers on saying, let's get better at it so that both of us win, we can create the first component for collaboration. So let's take a look at what else we can do. When we build the architecture, what are those components that we can do to improve security? When you read the report about the report of DevOps, you can see that cloud-native and loosely coupled architecture are a key component of performance. What are those attributes that improve security? As you automate all your deployment pipeline, you create an immutable infrastructure when changes are not done directly on system, but are done automatically. What improves is improving the consistency and the predictability of the behavior of the system. It removes this challenge of privileged access that has been dreading most of the organization in terms of resources to review and control what administrators are doing. It facilitates the reconciliation of state to make sure that your system runs exactly how it's supposed to be. When we started distributed system decades ago, that was really to improve the fault tolerance of the systems. As we've seen in DevOps, the same principle that allows a system to remain up when a system is down allows today to deploy new applications without downtime, to facilitate the deployment of new features, which means deployment of patches as well. We've changed the way we consider workloads with the cloud. From nurtured servers that we keep forever and we make sure that nothing happens to them, on the cloud environment we create and destroy them regularly, which means that as we practice this continuous repaving, we can ensure that no malicious workloads has been introduced and that we've shortened the window of exploit for potential attackers. The network has changed and is now fully authenticated through the zero trust principle, making sure that what runs in your environment and what connects to your system is really what you expect it to be. As we segment this network to reduce the blast radius, the declarative nature of those software-defined network really helps align the configuration of your network with the business logic, really improving and reducing a lot of the overheads in terms of knowing the connectivity of the systems. A very simple way to remember those 5 attributes is to remember that the goal of an organization is to get better at delivering new ideas for the business. So those 5 attributes are very key to create the collaboration between security and developers. In fact, when we look at the source of breaches that is reported every year by Verizon, we can see that most of those sources of breach can be eradicated by immutable workloads and the ephemeral nature of doing it. Doing IT better and delivering better is a massive improvement in terms of reducing the risk of our organization without investing in those very heavy security systems. We can see practices that are born out of cloud-native architecture. Today, companies are striving to practice this repairing faster, being better at patching the system when we find the vulnerabilities, being better at destroying and rebuilding the environment to make sure that whatever happens, the organization is able to continue. And rotating those secrets that is today an emerging source of breaches. So we hear everywhere that organizations are creating platforms, and why is it so important? Because when we look about the use of resources of our security and IT people, we realize that we allocate them not where a business value is created, but very much on systems that should be commodity. Over the years, operating system and networking have become a commodity. And we can now provision in minutes operating systems and networks that are fully configured without overhead and without much effort. In the last few years, really what excites me is new technologies such as the build packs really helps managing not only the containers and the application, but the content of those containers to make sure that what comes in is hardened and is well configured and we can trust the configuration of those systems. Basically, what we are doing is creating a consistent and trustable platform so that we move the resources of our IT teams and the developers toward what really matters to the business, creating business applications that our customers want. And for security, to get better at detecting anomalies and responding to them. It is not theoretical. The industry leaders are practicing it and are bragging about it. We can see banks who are destroying and rebuilding those environments weekly to make sure that they are always safe, that are applying those patches transparently without any human intervention. We can see streaming companies standardizing their development frameworks towards simple stack to make sure that both security and developers do not lose time managing all these overheads, but all focus their efforts in one direction. We can see defense organizations who used to be famous for their red tape automate all their compliance to make sure that they can deliver features that matters on the field. And this is really what we want to achieve. Once we build a platform, where do we move? We hear about DevSecOps, and that's a very tremendous improvement in the mindset of collaboration. Automating those security tests and so those security features to make sure that we find vulnerabilities faster is extremely important. But we should not forget that finding vulnerabilities in a pipeline is not the only requirement. That the life of an application starts when it goes to production. And the collaboration really happens once you go to production through new practices. And really, what we need to make sure is that we focus the efforts of everyone in the right direction. So how do we measure that? It's really good to be able to look at those new practices, but how do we measure and make sure that we are beating the drum and improving continuously? Let's look at a few measures. We want to improve the flow so that developers do not lose their productivity. And the alignment is very simple. If you want to be good at security, you need to patch faster. And your ability to patch fast is tremendously important in view of security. Regardless of the emergence of 0 days, we actually know that almost all of the breach today happens with existing and known vulnerabilities that were not patched. Focusing everyone to be better at detecting and responding to those vulnerabilities and to potentially exploit in the application is tremendous because it connects the SOC that is usually unaware of the business context and the developers. And that can be done with new practices, such as writing monitoring use case derived from your threat modeling. Practicing adversarial testing and bug bounties and red teaming are emerging practice, not because they are new and fancy, but because they give a very quick feedback for developers to understand and to find vulnerabilities faster before the adversary does, so that everyone can paddle in the same direction and fix what needs to be fixed faster. We want to make sure that productivity remains high, but also that the focus on the right vulnerabilities and people do not lose a drum. So it's very important to have an organizational supervision of this to make sure that we monitor regardless of the speed of the different organization. Eventually, at the size of an organization, different teams will go at different pace and might prioritize items differently. So by measuring all of those items and making sure that we have a proper reporting, then we can incentivize and making sure that the proper vulnerabilities and the proper practice and behavior are in place. Resilience have been around for decades and is in all our regulation, but very often is done through annual disaster recovery. And this practice have a big challenge is if you do an annual test, then you only know annually whether you're good at restoring your systems. And that's why the leaders on the pack really practice those new and proactive testing, chaos engineering, destroying and repaving rapidly to make sure that any point of time, they are able to restore the system to a known state without any impact. What it does is to give everyone the confidence and a little bit of breathing space that if something happens, they can restore a state in a matter of minutes. So we look at new practices, and we still want to do to focus on reducing the risk from the beginning. And we know that simple non-security practices have massive impact on security. Test-driven development and the test coverage have directly correlated with the production of defects, and are simple metrics that everyone could be focusing on, making sure that everything that is written can be tested. And these are a number of practices that really helps creating an organization where product owners are empowered to go at the pace they need for the business, are empowered to take the decision that is relevant for their product, instead of trying to apply the same benchmark for everyone, even though some of them might not be applicable. And that is the key of collaboration, making sure that we make decisions based on risk and the business, and not only through policies. So what do we want? Reduce complexity. Making sure that by automating, we allow people to focus and align on key objectives that are beneficial for everyone. Build security through practices and the existing tools rather than just buying an additional tool that creates those additional overheads. Empowering the product owners and each of the developers to make sure and make decisions that are relevant for their business, and making sure that things can be measured and monitored. Overall, it is about collaboration. It is about creating the common alignment and the common metrics so that everyone can partner on creating an organization that works better. Thank you.